All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Kenji and Lori and Dan and Catherine. And today we're continuing our discussion of the book Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Myss. We're in chapter 4, which is speaking of archetypes, but we're in the section titled Return of the Orphan on page 134. But before we get going with the reading, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then Catherine, you can take it from there.
Good morning from Denver. Lori Evans.
Dan Sisek in Las Vegas.
Good morning, Ken Pettingill, Gore, Maine.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement, and before we begin the reading, I was going to read the definition of archetype because we had some questions.
Thank you. That'd be great.
So archetype is a very typical example of a certain person or thing. Example, the book is a perfect archetype of the genre. It can be a recurrent symbol or motif in literature, art, or mythology. And in psychoanalysis and Jungian psychology, a primitive mental image inherited from the earliest human ancestors and supposed to be present in the collective unconscious. I am shocked to hear those words in a psychoanalysis definition. They're using
pretty cool.
spiritual words there, so it's interesting.
Thank
All right,
you.
you're welcome. We're at Return of the Orphan. We could probably reduce all our struggles with empowerment, such as those of Lucy and Maury, to our need to transform the abandoned, wounded, or dependent aspect of our child archetype to one that is healthy and self-sufficient. Because fairy tales and children's stories are such a rich source of insight into the innate courage and power that is contained within our archetypes, I find the clearest depiction of this transformation in the modern fable, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. In this well-known story, Dorothy has to seek out aspects of herself that she didn't know she had, including courage and intelligence well beyond those of the young orphan who left her Auntie Em back in Kansas. Seen as our archetypal adventure, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz presents the challenges of survival that we all face on our own yellow brick roads. In the book by L. Frank Baum, originally published in 1900, and the 1939 MGM movie starring Judy Garland, Dorothy is, like so many heroes of fairy tales and folk stories, literally the orphan child. Because she does not fit into the conventional tribe, her consciousness is her own to develop from the beginning. As the story opens, a cyclone is approaching, representing the chaos that is the classic precursor to transformation. As the cyclone looms menacingly, Dorothy runs to the storm cellar, trying to return to the tribe before the chaos, but they don't hear her, and in effect, won't allow it. Dorothy runs back into the house with her beloved dog Toto, whom she is holding on her bed as the cyclone lifts the house into the air. She bangs her head on the headboard, losing consciousness. In symbolic archetypal terms, a house represents the whole of the self, from the subconscious in the basement to the superego in the attic. The whole of Dorothy's life is lifted off in the chaos and begins to spin to be symbolically reconstituted. Having to undertake the hero's journey, she has awakened her charisma, the special grace that will see her through her ordeal of growth. Dorothy's journey takes her to Oz, where the house crashes down and she says famously to Toto, "I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore." She begins to sense that she has been separated from her familiar environment, that what is going on is happening only to her, not to the tribe, and that she has to find within her the strength and courage to endure what is coming. For the first time, she sees little munchkins who represent fragments of herself. Like any hero, adventurer, or spiritual seeker starting on a journey of self-discovery, Dorothy asks questions. Where am I? And how do I get home? The munchkins tell her that she has to go to Oz, in essence, to go on a journey to an unknown destination. Dorothy's guardian for the journey is Toto, the Latin word for everything. Toto is an extension of Dorothy. He is her intuition, like Vasilisa's doll, and an archetypal image of a guardian. In shamanic terms, we would say that Toto is her power animal. Toto is also Dorothy's reminder that, quote, everything she needs is always with her if she'll just stay aware of what's going on. All spiritual traditions emphasize the need to keep your attention in the present time. As long as you remain present, everything you need is present with you. As soon as you project yourself back through the rest of your life, you begin to manifest a sense of vulnerability and insecurity characterized by fear of failure. Projection is the act of taking your present moment and stretching it across a lifetime, an impossible formula that will always leave you powerless. Then Dorothy meets the Munchkin leader, who represents the unified self emerging to give her direction. Even as you feel lost and ask, where am I? A part of your interior self immediately rises to give an answer. In Dorothy's case, the answer is to go to Oz. As she undertakes her hero's journey, the 4 archetypes of survival, child, victim, prostitute, and saboteur, enter the playing field. Dorothy's orphan child has been leading to this point, her basic theme being, I'm a child, I've lost my way, I've got to get home. But the forces around her say, you're on your own, kid, and it's time for you to grow up. At this point in the film, although not in the original book, the 2 witches arrive on the scene, representing shadow and light. The Wicked Witch of the East says, I want your dog Toto, meaning that she wants to deprive Dorothy of her guardian. When the Wicked Witch goes after Toto in anger, Dorothy becomes frightened and her victim emerges. Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, holds off the Wicked Witch and gives Dorothy the famous ruby slippers. Those shoes represent another charism or grace that will see Dorothy through her journey to Oz. The book, which calls them silver shoes, make it clear that Dorothy never takes them off. She is so comfortable with them that she even sleeps in them, making it hard for the witch to get them away from her. When the Wicked Witch says, I want those ruby slippers, she is waking up Dorothy's prostitute. What the witch is actually saying to Dorothy is, at any given time, you can get off that difficult road if you will sell those shoes. That's the bargain. Every time you are given a new charism or clearer sense of self, the prostitute will test you to see if you're willing to sell your new spiritual power for material gain of some sort. On the lottery and somebody calls you up and asks if you'd like to invest in some swampland in Florida. That's also where the saboteur comes in. Are you going to sabotage your personal growth for a little comfort, or will your inner saboteur alert you to danger in time to keep you on the yellow brick road? The next person Dorothy meets is the Scarecrow, who complains that he doesn't have a brain. Her interaction with the Scarecrow represents a dialogue with her own intelligence, in which, for the first time, she has to assess her intellectual reality. As an extension of her inner self, the Scarecrow will also have to go to Oz to get a brain, and so they set off together. Down the road, they meet the Tin Woodman, who has rusted into immobility and who, once lubricated, complains that he needs a heart. In symbolic terms, Dorothy also needs to awaken the sense of love and compassion that lies within. Both the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman were dormant until Dorothy awakened them and herself to the need to go on the hero's journey to gain what they were essentially lacking. Along the way, they meet the Cowardly Lion, who is immobilized by fear. The lion lacks courage, which is a function of self-esteem and is related to will and choice. On their journey to Oz, Dorothy encounters many difficulties and detours, each of which arouses the victim archetype in her. She can act like a victim and give in, or she can call on her companions and guides for help, which she does on several occasions. The most dangerous obstacle is the field of poppies, which causes her to fall into a deep sleep, along with the lion and Toto. Certain realities are too much for us to handle on a conscious level, and so we must process them in an unconscious state, say in dreams or deep sleep. When Jesus took his 12 apostles to the Garden of Gethsemane and asked them to stay awake and watch with him, for example, they couldn't do it. It's as though the force field of anguish that he was giving off was too much for them to bear, and they fell into unconsciousness. You may notice yourself that if you're reading a book or attending a lecture that deals with spirituality or psychologically heavy material, you may fall asleep, perhaps aided by a boring lecturer. A similar phenomenon also occurs during healing services when certain people go down under the power, meaning that they lapse into momentary unconsciousness so that healing can take place on a deeper level. Some old wounds that are being healed may be too traumatic to be addressed consciously. Dorothy's transition from childhood to adulthood, from orphan child to hero, is going to require not only grace, but also a healing of her past, which is accomplished in part in the unconscious state. Dorothy and her companions eventually arrive at Oz and go before the wizard. As any good spiritual master would do, he immediately puts them to the test, saying that he won't help them unless they bring back the broom of the wicked witch. The paradox here is that you will always have a test to invoke grace, and you need grace to pass the test. You can't just suddenly become courageous. You have to act out courage to know you have courage. When they go to the Wicked Witch's dark castle to get the broom, Dorothy is captured, just as during our own spiritual development, even if we get past our desires, we always get captured in some way by our fears and feel isolated and abandoned. The prison in the dark castle is reminiscent of the dark forest through which Dorothy passed on her way to Oz in search of integration. The dark forest is a time-honored image of the dangers of the search for self. In Dante's Divine Comedy, another allegorical account of a spiritual journey from the lower regions through purgatory to paradise, the hero went through the dark wood of error. When stuck in a dark wood or prison, we need to look to the saboteur, who reminds us that we must keep the faith and not give in to our fears. But at each stage of her journey, Dorothy is able to call on the lion, the Tin Woodman, and the Scarecrow to rescue her. In effect, she is calling on her own courage, will, and heart, which she is in the process of unifying. As her three companions are trying to rescue Dorothy, the witch shows up and sets fire to the Scarecrow, beginning her attack on the intellectual level, as often happens when we try to follow a spiritual path. The mind says, "This is ridiculous. People couldn't possibly get enlightened by sitting on a cushion and closing their eyes." But Dorothy picks up a bucket of water, representing her unconscious, and throws it on the witch, thereby making herself self-conscious. As the water hits the witch, she chides Dorothy for doing this one thing that could free her of the witch's power, and then she melts away. As soon as Dorothy calls on her unconscious, the whole world that had once scared her dissolves, and she sees only safety. Dorothy and her companions return to Oz feeling totally successful. They bring the broom to the wizard, only to be told that it's not enough. Toto, the guardian, will not accept their rejection and says, in effect, "This is wrong. You have to see that it's fraudulent. I'm going to show you." The guardian goes over and pulls the curtain, hiding the role-playing wizard, showing Dorothy that she does not need to rely on a shadow guru to do her spiritual work for her. If you project your own needs and fantasies onto a guru, you may end up getting burned. Exposed, the wizard is forced to make good on his promises and help Dorothy find her way home from Oz. Although Oz represents the achievement of spiritual power and independence, it's essentially meaningless unless she can bring back home what she has learned and apply it to her everyday life. Spiritual insight is not an end in itself, but a means to transform our life on earth from mere survival and dominance into compassion and service to others. Dorothy is now confronted with yet another test, this one regarding false power. Even though the wizard has been less than forthcoming on his promises, Dorothy is planning to accept his guidance and accompany him in his hot air balloon. Note the ironic choice of vehicle. But Toto, following his nature by pursuing a squirrel, jumps out of the basket as if to say, let's get out of here. Dorothy has the good sense not to want to be separated from her guardians and runs out after Toto, allowing the wizard to leave without her. Having made one good choice, Dorothy is rewarded by the appearance of her other guardian, Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. Glinda reminds Dorothy that she has had the power to return home all along, only she didn't know it. The ruby slippers, which have not left her feet since she first put them on, are all she needs. Her words are reminiscent of the Buddhist teaching that we are already perfect Buddhas, we just don't realize it, and so we act like unenlightened children. If we truly knew we possessed Buddha nature or Christ consciousness or God realization, we would be home free. Dorothy clicks her heels together as instructed and chants the mantra her angel guardian gives her. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. In L. Frank Baum's original text, the exchange is even clearer than in the film version. Your silver shoes will carry you over the desert, replied Glinda. If you had known their power, you could have gone back to your Aunt Em the very first day you came to this country. But then I should not have had my wonderful brains, cried the Scarecrow. I might have passed my whole life in the farmer's cornfield. And I should not have had my lovely heart, said the Tin Woodman. I might have stood and rusted in the forest till the end of the world. And I should have lived a coward forever, declared the Lion, and no beast in all the forest would have had a good word to say to me. This is all true, said Dorothy, and I'm glad I was of use to these good friends. But now that each of them has what he most desired, and each is happy and having a kingdom to rule besides, I think I should like to go back to Kansas. The silver shoes, said the Good Witch, have wonderful powers, and one of the most curious things about them is that they can carry you to any place in the world in 3 steps, and each step will be made in the wink of an eye. All you have to do is knock the heels together 3 times and command the shoes to carry you wherever you wish to go. Dorothy has completed her hero's journey, come to terms with her 4 survival archetypes, and with courage consolidated her mind, heart, and will. Her most challenging adversary, the Wicked Witch, has proved to be the one who did the most to expand her soul. And so Dorothy wakes up safe in her bed, right back in Kansas with the same foster parents with whom she had been so disenchanted with at the beginning of the story. Only now she embraces them wholeheartedly. This is almost done, guys. One more page. Dorothy appears to be in the same physical reality, but is not. She is fully transformed. She emerges not as the frightened little orphan child, but as an intelligent, fully awakened heart consciousness in the same body. She has returned whole from chaos and her journey. Our work has essentially the same goal. By learning to recognize the archetypal patterns at work within your psyche, which I will teach you in Chapter 5, you can begin to view your life symbolically, rather than taking every interaction personally and viewing it on only the physical plane. Like the lion, you need courage to look at the victim archetype within you and learn to make it into your ally. You need the heart that the Tin Woodman sought so that you can love yourself when you see the prostitute at work in your psyche, and to turn it to your advantage. And the intellect that the Scarecrow prized so highly can work with your saboteur to recognize the warning signs that you are about to do yourself in. When you tie those together, you can, like Dorothy, use your will to transform the child within, whether abandoned, wounded, or dependent, into an empowered being capable of directing your own life with passion and skill. For then, you have the elements of the soul, the eternal self, and you are on your way to discovering your spiritual identity. That takes us to Chapter 5, where we'll stop.
I had no idea.
Thank you, Catherine. That was amazing. Great
You're
reading.
welcome. You're welcome.
I like this reminder of the story of Dorothy. And how that kind of can relate in our own lives when we are faced with a struggle that maybe we didn't intend to have happen in our life. I mean, how often do you really have a struggle that you intend to have happen? But I suppose in some ways we probably do, and we decide to take on a new challenge in our life, whether we're trying to build a new business or we're trying to, change to a new career path, or we just want to, we start a new relationship for that matter. There's all these different things where we go on a new path that is a challenge. And sometimes it doesn't go the way we think it's going to go, or we are faced with things that bring up our crap, if you will. This is kind of like a blah way of saying it. But, for instance, when we start a new relationship and everything's all bliss at the beginning, and then all of a sudden that person starts to rub us the wrong way, right? And that's not them. It's our own internal baloney that's coming up. And if we can recognize those things, then those are opportunities for growth. And if we can recognize those things when we start a new career or start a new job or start a new business, that when stuff comes up and we're struggling for whatever reason it happens to be, whether we're afraid to take a new step or whether we are, confronted by a person who seems to be, I don't know, irritating us in some way or stopping us in somehow, is that we can kind of look at our own self and try and identify maybe these different archetypes that are playing a role, and then work on those things so that we can grow and find that power within ourselves, kind of like what Dorothy did. She found this power within herself. She was able to kind of take aspects of each of her archetypes and overcome the challenges and create the journey that helps her to get to where it is that she ultimately wants to go. So I think this is a great reminder and a great story for us too, that we all know this story, right? So I think that when we have crap come up in our lives that we're struggling with, if we think of ourselves as like Dorothy on the yellow brick road, is how is this challenge trying to take me, to sidetrack me, or how is it trying to block my path, or how is it that, what do I need? Which thing do I need? Do I need to gain some courage? Do I need more heart? Do I need what's the other one?
Brains.
Brains. Do I need to face this from an intellectual way, or do I need to learn something in order to overcome the thing, right? So if we kind of look at every challenge that comes up and look at, okay, which aspect do we need to either dig deeper into to gain from, or do we need to recognize that that's the thing that's blocking us, and that we need to dig into what it is inside of that, whether it's fear or whether it is a lack of knowledge, or whether it is, you're not being sympathetic enough, or all those different things. So great. I love this little section here. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's also the one thing that kind of hit me was, and to me now, as I'm thinking of the movie, it's almost as if she stumbled upon each aspect of what she was missing, I guess, so to speak. It wasn't so easily and readily, because Glenda didn't really tell her about that, but she went through each phase, and then and and then when she threw the water on the witch, she did not know about what it would do to the witch, and she was throwing the water on the fire on the broom, and she was trying to put the fire out because she was going to set the scarecrow on fire, I think, at that point. Yeah. And so there, it was a byproduct of
Doing good.
her responding to protecting her friend, and inadvertently found the power that quelched and got rid of the wicked witch, which was what she needed to do. But I'm going to say something in a weird way. It's not going to make sense, but I think I think we need to get rid of the Wicked Witch, but we don't need to get rid of the Wicked Witch, because in that, I think that's what helps draw us into digging deeper into ourselves and trying and going through the aspects of the growth we need, if you can kind of understand my roundabout thought process there. And I've always wondered, and this is just my own curiosity, you know how in the movie there's a yellow brick road, but there, I think it was a red? Wasn't there a red brick additional part in there? I always wondered where that would have went, because I would have thought that with the ruby shoes, it might have been the red, but I don't know. That's just my weird little thought from the movie.
I don't know that it's so weird. I just am grateful to have read this book about that and never really made the correlations. Just to my own feeble brain.
I think most people don't make that connection. I would
Oh,
say there's
good,
very
that makes
few
me
people
feel
that
better.
make it. Most people just take movies at face value when there's often a much deeper meaning to movies, and the author that writes it is not always able to communicate all the aspects, through it. It is it probably is my favorite movie. If I had to pick one, I have a lot of favorite movies, but if I had to pick one, The Wizard of Oz would be it. And it is because it spoke to me on such a spiritual level. And I even, I was in an abusive relationship, and I was trying to figure out if I needed the courage to leave or the courage to stay. And I was watching this movie, and there's a line later on in the movie where when the cowardly lion is getting his courage, and the Oz tells him that, don't mistake the wisdom to run away from something with lack of courage. And though that quote, I didn't just quote it perfectly, but that quote in the movie like jumped off the screen at me and rattled my brain to the point that I left that relationship. And so I really, I don't know if I would still be here if I had stayed in that relationship, because he was literally trying to kill me. So like it's amazing how spirit steps in and speaks through things to us at just the right time, and gives us these challenges that we need in our lives at just the right time for us to overcome them and really be who we really are, instead of just trying to play the victim or the prostitute or some of these other aspects of ourselves.
The tour.
Yeah, it's interesting how, for me, I think I'm learning that as I've learned over my life, things, and aspects about myself, but I'm also learning I tend to revert back to some of those old things, and I have to remind myself of some of the things I've gained, and for lack of a better way, God and aspects within my life have shown me that reverting back to that does not help me. I need to move forward in what I've learned and what I've gathered and what I've taken to heart, and keep moving forward and revitalize it and maybe find new ways of keeping that fresh in me, so that way it's forefront and I don't let it just kind of fall to the back or fall to the wayside sometimes, and to realize that I learned a lot of the things I learned for those aspects, and to be able to move forward the way I need to move forward. Okay, so somebody can speak now.
Okay, silence is okay. It means we're all thinking. We're all absorbing this information that we've just been presented with. And this is a very introspective section, really, because if we think back on all the different things that we have had throughout our lives. Now, you mentioned, Dan, about, the Wicked Witch being a kind of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. It's bad because, yeah, it sucks when shit happens, right? But at the same time, it's the journey of going through that challenge that helps us to grow. And I have had a lot of challenges in my life. I mean, a lot. And I think that we all have. I mean, you get to be our age and you've had some shit happen, right? I mean, if you're young and you haven't had anything bad happen to you yet, you're pretty lucky. And but when you get to be older, you definitely have had some challenges in your life, and how we can look back and we can see, okay, well, here's a challenge that I overcome without it being too much difficulty. It was a challenge, but for whatever reason, for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. And then there's other challenges that were just significant events in our lives that changed everything, and we struggled with it, and it was hard, and we don't realize all of the different parts of our inner self that are being challenged in those situations. But we can look back in those times and we can go, okay, well, in this particular situation, obviously it was my courage that was being challenged, or it was obviously it was my the prostitute coming up, or I was I was having a lot of fear, or I was having a lot of I think more often for me, and the reason why I keep coming back to the fear side is that's because that's what I've faced with more often than not, is I have this fear of something worse happening. I'm having this challenge, and I'm worried about how I'm going to address the situation, and I'm worried that something more is going to happen. And so then I get frozen in the whole aspect of I don't know the answer. And so then I'm researching, but then I'm still frozen in the what's the word I'm looking for? Information, but I can't take action. You know what I'm talking?
Frozen.
Right.
Analysis.
Yes, analysis paralysis. That's what it is. Thank you, Jason. You know what I'm talking about. You get stuck in that, and that's still, it's a fear thing, right? So but we can take that information that we've experienced in our lives prior to, look at it from a different way with this additional information that we have now, and grow from that and change everything. I don't think we realize that by changing how we see the past, we actually can change the future. Yeah, I saw a post just recently on Facebook that was talking about exactly that on the quantum physics level, and how changing how you interact with the past in your mind actually can change on the quantum level, so that the past is actually different, which is completely crazy when you think about that as a possibility. But I've seen it happen in my own life where I've looked at something in a different way, and that's changed my whole attitude about everything from that point going forward relating to that particular thing, i.e. my relationship with my husband. That was huge. Just changing my whole thought process on how I felt about him made a huge difference in how I was feeling about him in the time, in the moment. So I'm going to stop. My Bailey just stepped in here and I think she wants to ask me something.
That and the aspects of the orphan child, the abandoned child, the abused child, all of those different aspects of your childhood, your inner being, that things come into your life for a reason to help get you through, like your security blanket or your little dog, your companion.
Oh, yeah, it's going back and now in retrospect, looking back at some of my childhood, and while it didn't change what happened and what I went through, but at the same point, because I have grown up and I've gotten some other perspectives from people that have told me a little bit of things, explained a couple things, and then me going back with a more adult mind and not the child, I've been able to reframe some aspects of it. And while I still have my tensions over my birth mother and my stepdad's passed away, so that's neither here nor there. But I also have a different going back retrospective aspect of it, and I'm able to not change the fact that I still believe it was wrong. I believe that it never should have happened. I think I still can't believe that parents would be that way. But in looking and thinking about it in light of what they were going through, from what I've learned and understood, and from going back and reassessing, it's changed, like you, Samantha, it's changed my thoughts and my perspective of how I look at it moving forward. And the fact that I'm here where I'm at now today, and in essence, is also part of what's helped me make me now today. And the change and the growth and the type of heart and the type of how I am with people. So I'm also looking at it with now, oddly enough, with a weird sense of the only way I can say it is maybe a slight sense of gratitude that God allowed me to survive and in some ways live through a little bit of it so I could learn that and carry that with me and try and use that in how I treat other people. And I think that might help explain why I feel about people the way I feel, even though sometimes I don't always act that way. So it's, that dual aspect of it. But oddly enough, it's weird how I look at it, some of it now.
It's the whole aspect of the pendulum. It swings this much this way and then it swings equally the opposite way.
And it doesn't always have to be big, life-changing, huge things. Like the simple example, y'all heard me bitch and moan about cleaning the pool a million times, right? But when my family was here, And it was like super chaotic in the house. I would go out and clean the pool, and it was the most relaxing. It was like going on vacation. It was like, I loved it. Like my whole outlook at it changed. And also, I was a little bit OCD about keeping it like no leaves floating around, or, like keeping it pristine. But also, walking out there one morning to clean it, there was he was just a little black beetle bug. And he had found a leaf and a stick that was floating around on the top of the pool water. And he had climbed up onto that leaf, and then he climbed up onto that stick, and he was standing on his back legs at the top of that stick. And I thought, what a brave bug. And so I will never completely clean the pool again. I will always leave a leaf or a stick for that brave bug to go on his hero's journey.
Wow. And it reminded me of the was a kung fu movie where wax on, wax off, and you get it cleaned up and the wind comes up and blows more leaves and
The Karate Kid.
something you can't control. Go ahead, Kenji.
The Karate Kid
Ah, yeah, thank you.
with Mr. Miyagi.
But that's a good point, Lori. We all have had that where we've been in those moments or where we've done something and something can come up and after we've done it and just totally, like, for lack of a better way of saying, crap on it. And we're like, really? But at the same point, you can also then, but again, life is teaching me that it's how I look at it. And if, nothing's going to stay exactly the same all forever. It's not. It's just something's going to come along, something's going to change it, something's going to happen. And it's how I deal with it when it happens. And so at that point, okay, well, that just, I may not clean it right this day, but I'll have to come back around and work on it, deal with it, and clean it up again, and I'll be happy with it. But I think that's another aspect of the Wizard of Oz that I never really thought of, but it teaches the resilience and the room that we have it within us to continue to carry forward, continue on, to no matter what. We just have to also remember that we have that, and we have that ability, and to not let that, because I do this a lot. I'll sit there and I'll start focusing on one little thing, and my brain will start going, and I'll like, okay, but how am I going to pay for this, or how am I going to do that, or how am I, and I get so on that I forget that I've been in these similar situations. God has always helped provide me and given me a way and showed me a way to deal with it and get through with it, and goes back to the idea of that this too shall pass.
Yeah,
You know,
go ahead and finish. I was going to say, this too shall pass has constantly been echoing in my head, that in all the mundane stuff of cleaning the pool or whatever it is, everything is everyday mundane, and it's all a matter of how you look at it, and whether you let the prostitute or saboteur come in and take over. Because as she says, we all have that.
Yeah, it's really remarkable how many how many lessons are in that story and in that the journey that Dorothy has and is really forced upon her. And it's funny because um, and I love your example of the Beatles and they're having their hero's journey, and that you recognize that and in that moment. It's great. But that book and of Wizard of Oz and that story, the movie, I think a lot of us maybe only saw that uh, when we were kids. And had no idea of all the um, the meaning behind uh, each character. Definitely didn't have that going into into the watching it for the first time. Um, you don't know how it's going to play out, but then if you are told about that later and then you watch it again and you have a little more perspective. But I mean I was aware of some of that, some of the symbolism that was in the movie, but I don't think I've ever had it explained to in depth um, like in the reading just now. It's very I mean, I think two points that are eye-opening to me is that the whole thing, the whole the whole journey, the whole storyline is initially started off by a a tragic thing that happens. And we all think that it's the tornado that comes and whisks her away, takes her away, puts her in this whole new world. In the end, it's she wakes up out of a coma, I guess, or sleep, right?
Right.
And the house is still in the same place, but she made this journey. She was forced into this predicament that she felt was real, and so I equate it to you know having something traumatic happen in your life where it just turns your whole life upside down, and now you're dealing with strange new people and strange new places because you're having to figure things out, and suddenly everything you've known and everything you've believed in is not quite the same, and you're trying to in a sense, like was mentioned, you're being forced to grow up in a way. Perhaps that's it, or perhaps you just had a different understanding of how things were, and you're being shook into a different reality, and so that initial trauma, uh, life event that's causing the beginning of this journey, that then uh, having to having to both be both I want to use the word saddled with this insurmountable task of figuring everything out and trying to find her way back home, and at the same time being fitted with these shoes that 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 were kind of a result of the traumatic experience that was also ended up being at the end um, the way that she could have gotten back at the same time. And I just thought it was interesting too that I didn't realize how. I mean, I obviously realized the witch was always trying to get her shoes, but I didn't make that certainly didn't make the connection that was the was that, if I'm right, that was like the prostitute archetype trying to sell herself short or give up something, an ability that she didn't even really realize that she had. Um, but that's just also so fascinating. There's so many things in there that that are meaningful like that, and that we see it. That when you watch that movie, you're not watching it to learn about all that stuff. Um, and so it sort of can smack you in the face when you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that is kind of a guide to working through um, difficult moments in your life, very difficult up in life, changing moments that are very similar to when the hero's journey and when some of these epic figures have had to take time out to figure things out and find a new path. So thank you very much for the reading and all of your great points today, guys. Appreciate it.
I was just gonna jump out too on top of what you were saying as I'm thinking back to the movie, how it's interesting in the movie as um, Carolyn Myss was pointing out. Remember the lady on the bike that always was mad at Dorothy and Toto because he always gets in the yard or does something, and she was the lady that would ride that bike. She was the Wicked Witch. So that was the part that, because Dorothy did not like her, and the fact that she always, for Toto just being Toto, being a dog, do what dogs do. And then two, of course, she had, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion, which were the three ranch hands that worked on the ranch that were good friends that she interacted with, and loved and cared about on the ranch. They were the aspects of that aspect, and I've seen it before, but I've never put it together. And then I think Glenda, and I've never put together before, but I think Glenda was the embodiment of her Aunt Em, who was the one that was kind of guiding Dorothy, teaching her along with her uncle, but I don't think he had, maybe he was a little bit of the wizard a little bit, but I think Glenda was more like her Auntie Em, showing her that she has a lot more strength and power and strength within her to facilitate what she needed to do. And it was in the playing out of the dream, coma, whatever she lived through, to bring out those strengths that she had, so that way when she came back to reality, so to speak, she had that whole new perspective of, because I don't remember everything that she says, but she talks about them being in the dream and this and that and all that. But I think she came back with a new appreciation for everybody, including that lady on the bike. in a roundabout way, and maybe to better able handle that woman, so that way she would not get frustrated with her whenever she got upset with Toto.
Yeah, and the whole idea that we all have the ruby slippers that can take us where we want to go or need to go. And that we all have them already. Ruby or silver or whatever, however you want to look at them.
Now it's just learning how to activate them.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we have the power to do what it is we need if we recognize it. But there's always that, not always, but there is sometimes you're getting tempted to stay in your comfort zone and not use your power or forfeit your power, because you don't want to get out of your comfort zone to do the things you either know or haven't figured out that you need to do yet. But then, yeah, once you figure out that you do have the power to do that, it's like her being told that she's that she, the power was in her feet, on her feet the whole time. Perhaps that's another symbolism too, that it's, get up and go and get moving, and then it'll kind of you'll be kind of shown the way. Perhaps.
I will definitely not look at that movie the same. I will have new eyes next time I see it. Because it usually comes on about once a year and just kind of, oh, that movie again. I've seen that. I'm something in there, maybe you learn each time.
Yeah, I think we could kind of look at a number of different movies like that. Really, anytime there's the hero's journey type of movie, is to try and recognize the different archetypal patterns that come up and how they're being presented in a movie to help us learn something about ourselves. And instead of just watching movies for entertainment, but to be watching them for those inner insights that we can have for ourselves to help ourselves in our current whatever in our lives.
I don't think we have to limit it to movies. We can also go to books and
Well,
things
yeah.
like that. Things, where when we read it for enjoyment, but with that little bit of a critical aspect of it, like, okay, what's in this that I can pull out? But it was funny, as you were speaking, I was just thinking, oh, a movie that probably would be good to go back and rewatch would be The Matrix now. See the aspects of it, because it has a lot of similar, Neo things like that, and all that with the things he went through and what he learned and where he came out on the other side from unplugging to the Matrix, which I think we're all semi plugged in that sense too, and we need to learn to unplug from that in the ways that we can too.
The aspects of the courage and the fear and all of that is part of all of our lives. The courage aspect and the fear. I just said that. Definitely put some light on it.
I think we all probably can think of a movie or series or something that brings all of these aspects up. Or it's like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's a huge one. That's exactly the same kind of a thing. But if you haven't seen that one, I encourage you to watch that. That's got a lot of symbolic. I couldn't read the books because they're just too I don't know, something about the reading of the books. But when they made it into a movie series, I was able to follow the whole thing. Enjoyed it very much. Yeah, I don't know what it is about those books that were just hard
I
to
haven't
read.
read them either.
Yeah, they don't flow with I don't know what the word
It's not
is
my
for it.
genre.
The literary way that they were written was just not the easiest to read. So almost like reading Shakespeare. I don't know, not exactly, not in the same way, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
guys, we're at the top of the hour. We're actually past the top of the hour, and I know that everybody has some things they need to do today. Or not, I don't know about everybody, but I know I do, and Catherine does, and Dan and Jason. So we need to get wrapped up for today. So if we have final thoughts, go ahead and jump out. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up.
Thank you. So happy to have been here. Have a great week.
Yeah, me too. I just have one thought that when I was when I first seeing the film, I think I noticed how the lion and the scarecrow and the Tin Man were also the people that played her family members or the ranch hands in the beginning. I noticed that, but I think I just wrote that off to being that, oh, they used the same actors because it's part of like a play type thing. So they and I didn't. So when I first saw it, I didn't make any connection as to that was a psychological thing and that they represented certain aspects of her own psyche. Of course, young, being young and everything. I just kind of taking it at face value. Okay, well, they're reusing these cast members because they're actors and they can play other parts, and so it's just so very interesting when the different levels that you can view something and how you can frame the same exact story um, or event in your life a different way if you take it at a different if you take it in a different level, I guess is what I'm saying. But thank you so much. Excuse me. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Deep understanding.
Awesome,
Yeah.
guys.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Have a good day and good week, everyone.
Yep. And for those of you who are watching, if you like this video or you gained any value from it, please give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. That way you'll also get updated every time we upload a new video. And so next week, we're going to start chapter 5, which is recognizing the aspects. Let me see what it's titled. Yeah. I thought I had it in my head. Identifying your archetypal patterns. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. So we can start looking at how do we recognize these different aspects of ourselves and can really kind of dig into what they might mean for us in our own lives. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing week. We'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.